March for MACCRAGE! And we shall know no fear!
Today, we'll be reviewing the Ultramarine movie, the movie that came out in 2010. But before that, I have to do the regular shilling of telling you to like, comment, and subscribe, and even share if you haven't. Good, now that the shilling's out of the way, let's talk about the movie. And where do I begin? You know what, let's begin with a summary of the plot. The movie starts pretty interesting with a confusing battle between something that at first you can presume are Imperial Fists, and you would be correct, and another force, heretics, shall we say. Now, are they Chaos Space Marines or are they just regular cultists? We'll find out later. But it starts with this Imperial Fist that's running around looking for a relic. Then we jump perspective to the Ultramarines of the second company. And I have to point this out. How is it that whenever something's made about Space Marines, it's always the second company of the Ultramarines? Think about it like this. This movie is about the second company of the Ultramarines. And so is the Space Marine game. So too will be Space Marine 2. It's kind of weird, but be that as it may, we're gonna deal with it. We start in the Ultramarine spaceship, of course for the second company, with a duel between Captain Severus and Brother Proteus. There, the captain tries to instill some value and knowledge into Proteus, and he teaches him an important lesson: to never yield. The captain wins the duel, of course, and then we move on to the initiation process, which is basically the captain and the apothecary making the new recruits of the Ultramarines swear an oath that they will fight and defend humanity and bow to a relic hammer that they have there on the ship. Good. Now once with that, we move on to a scene where, well, things are happening and what could be assumed as an armory. There are marks being put everywhere, there are weapons being prepared, a little banter here and there between the characters about glory, honor, death, war, and then we move on to the goal of this. See, the Ultramarines were sent to intercept and help their cousins, the Imperial Fists, who were being attacked. Some of the Space Marines, some of the Ultramarines, presumed that the beacon that relayed the help message to them was on auto loop, if you wish, on autocast. And there was basically no Imperial Fist left to send the message. Keep that in mind. Then, when they get close to the planet where this was all happening, they go down, and this next part is them walking around talking. At some point, Proteus sees something and shoots at it, misses, and everybody thinks he's crazy. Some banter here and there, and it feels very much in this point of the story, in this section, it feels very much like one of those war movies from Afghanistan, if you wish, where it's focused more on the characters than on any particular action or something. It's way more character driven, and it's interesting in that point because you see this a lot with books, and you see this a lot in the games where the Space Marines aren't presented as cold, calculating monsters that just wage war against the enemies of the Imperium. No, you get a human side to them, and you can see that while they are brotherhood, like all brotherhoods and like all brothers, there are disagreements between them. They fit together well, but each of them has their own personality. Proteus is, though, a very strong-willed individual. In turn, that makes him a little bit different from the other Space Marines. You could probably see it as Captain Proteus being a representation of Captain Titus from the Space Marine games, because they are more strong-willed and they are there to make decisions that do not, respectively, follow the Codex Astartes. Nevertheless, this scene where they just walk and talk and have Proteus shoot randomly is an interesting one, and I feel is really well done. I think that's one of the stronger suits of the movie. It delves very well into the interpersonal connections in the chapter, and in this case, the company. Now I have to make this side thing here because at first you might not realize what company they're from. You hear me talking about the second company, but you might not get it. Well, you see, Space Marines are marked by a few things that designates their company. One of them is the color of the trim of their shoulder pads. This one is yellow. That's kind of how you get it as the second company. Though I wouldn't blame people for being fooled, since all of the Space Marines have a 5, a Roman 5, Latin 5, whatever, marked on their armor. And it might throw into balance things that you might think they're like the 5th company, but it's the 2nd company, trust me. That's more like squad marking. Nevertheless, let's continue with the summary. Once they're on the planet, they go to the only important location on it, which is a shrine, who was defended by 100 Imperial Fists. If you know about Warhammer 40k, you understand that 100 of a something when it comes to Space Marines is a lot. That's a full company. A chapter is usually made out of, 1,000 Space Marines. And each of them are split into 10 companies, each 100 men strong. And they lost contact with 100 Imperial Fists, which is a huge problem. The Space Marines are not that weak. Again, keep that in mind for a second. During their walk, they stumble upon a battlefield, one filled with the dead bodies of the Imperial Fists, all the corpses being desecrated, which leads the captain to presume correctly that it is the hand of chaos. At the sight of that, the apothecary advises caution, and that's a better option to retreat, but the captain doesn't agree with that, and they continue forward. Some more walking down the road, and we finally get our first piece of action in this movie, and it's basically a Chaos Space Marine ambushing our protagonists. A few Ultramarines die in the process, unfortunately, but the Chaos Space Marines get their comeuppance. So everything is good. But after a little bit more walking, they reach the shrine, and boy, the shrine is devastated from the battle, and even worse, it's been desecrated. Corpses of the Imperial Fists are laid in the 8-pointed star on the door of the shrine. And as you can imagine, the shrine door doesn't open. So they have to find another way in. They do so, and we get a little bit of a weird segment in my point of view with Space Marines doing parkour. It was not really parkour, but it's as close as you can get. After Dawn of War 3, I'm not really surprised of anything, to be honest. Continuing on. They reach the shrine, and at some point, while in there, they find themselves facing a demon prince. Now, technically, they only refer to it as a demon, but by the looks of it, it looks very close to the old model for the demon prince. And that's what it is. It's a demon prince. The demon takes the lives of a few Ultramarines, and the captain tries to fight him off, but in the end, what happens is that the captain and the demon fall into an abyss, and you never hear from them again. So, after so many dead in our ranks, Proteus is left with the command of this little squad of Ultramarines. And they move on. They have no problem, and at some point they find 2 Imperial Fists. One of them of Chaplain, nice, and another one who seems to be just a normal tactical marine with the bolter, whose role was defend the relic from that shrine world, which was a codex, basically a book. And there are some tensions in this, and it's clear that the Ultramarines aren't fully trusting of the Imperial Fists. They kind of say it outright at some point, but nevertheless, it is their mission and they will get them. But, since fate is kind of cruel, when they go out and they're preparing to reach their extraction point, they are met with a bunch of Chaos Space Marines who are just eager to get in and wet their blades and bolters. And looky there, what do we have here? Some Space Marines to destroy. Many losses happen on the Ultramarine side. Of course, the 2 Imperial Fists get out of it alive. But things are looking kinda dire for the Ultramarines. Until the captain comes in and saves everybody by decimating the Chaos Space Marines. Proteus asks his captain, "How is this possible? How do you survive?" And the captain only replies with, "The Emperor protects." Which is true. Apparently he does. Jumping after that, we reach the point where everybody's kinda happy. They're going back to their ship. The Ultramarines are prepared to go back to their homeworld in the worlds of Ultramar. Slight problem though, Proteus kinda suspects the two Imperial Fists, because the other Imperial Fist, who's not the chaplain, is very defensive of that codex. He's very defensive of the book. The moment anybody gets close to it, he points his bolter at them, including his Ultramarine saviors. Which, as you can expect, isn't really that, reassuring. Especially in a case where this planet was left for like 6 weeks or something at the hands of traitors and chaos. So there might be some corruption there. Proteus talks with his very good captain, and they go to confront the Imperial Fists. Of course, the Imperial Fist tactical marine tries to defend the codex because the captain wants to read it, but the captain kind of brushes him off, being like, "Oh, it's my chapter, it's my fleet, it's my ship, it's my whatever. You're here because of me." And he opens the codex, and what would you guess is in the codex? Nothing. It's empty. The chaplain tries to make a little bit of an intervention to change the way things are going, but the captain kills him. The other Imperial Fist, in a rage, jumps up the captain, and the captain pushes him off and kind of knocks him out. There's no denying it, he's knocked out. But there's a little plot point that I forgot to mention in this. You see, there's a standard bearer with the Ultramarines, and standard bearers are a usual occurrence when it comes to Space Marines. But their standard starts to glow when they're close and in the presence of demons. Presumably the chaplain was the demon. But still, the banner still burned bright. And then Proteus realizes that is the captain. The captain basically confirms it and kills the standard bearer. But not before the standard bearer kind of closes Proteus and the Imperial Fist in the same room. They wake up and they go to move and find him, to find their former captain, because that's no longer the captain, that's the demon prince that the captain fought. All's good. They gather another Space Marine with them, another Ultramarine. They find some dead Ultramarines left behind, including the apothecary, and the demon was in their chapel of sorts, where they held a relic that the newly inducted Space Marines had their whole deal in the beginning of the movie. Of course, they try to fight the demon, but the demon is kind of strong, kills a bunch of them, or whatever they brought with them, kills the Imperial Fist, and there are only 2 Ultramarines left to fight him off. They get kind of beaten up. At some point, the demon takes Proteus and wants to change his face, basically an act of possession. Now, you might wonder what was the deal with the demon. Well, he was after the codex, because the codex is empty, unless you're a demon, or a psyker I guess, that looks into it, and then everything becomes much more clear, because that came with instructions about opening a warp rift. The demon's plan is to open one directly in Ultramar, in the capital planet of the Ultramar sector, the birth world of the Ultramarines, quotation marks, and the birth planet of Gulliman. Again, quotation marks, because we all know Gulliman was found there, yada yada. So they have to stop him. But just when the demon was preparing to change bodies and possess Proteus, the apothecary comes in and saves him. But he doesn't live that long. So the demon comes again after he's done with the apothecary to take over Proteus. But Proteus learned a few things after his first fight with the captain and manages to knock the demon off. Once that happens, he goes straight for the relic that they had their whole induction in front of. So they get it, or he gets it at this point, Proteus, and he defeats the demon. And thus, Ultramar is saved from demonic incursion. The movie ends on a nice, interesting note where now Proteus is the captain of the second company of Ultramarines and swears in some new inductees that will finally taste battle. Now that we knocked that out of the way, let's begin the review part of this. Oh boy, where do I begin? It was made in 2010. Okay, so you have some understanding that the movie isn't gonna be peak graphics. And it's understandable. Graphics aren't everything. For what it's worth, the movie can stand on its own 2 feet by its story alone, but the animation is terrible. The Space Marine weapons are comically large. And I'm not even joking, they're comically large. You wouldn't see this anywhere, trust me. You wouldn't see this not even in the old artwork for the game. It is that comically large. And I know it's a little bit of a dumb point, especially in a universe where shoulder pads are everything, the biggest fashion trend. Still, they're comically large, and some of them work, like the Flamer or the Heavy Bolter. Those work nice, but regular bolters, the Bolt Pistol, those are comically large. It's funny, it's like they're toys. For the most part, they do look and feel like toys. What I have to give it, though, for this is that the armor is very well done, especially for the Ultramarines, for Space Marines in general. The armor is very well done. It feels like a model. Now, you might understand and see this as something weird and strange, but the idea is that it looks how you expect it to look. It's not ultra realistic and it's not cartoonish. It looks perfect for Warhammer 40k. It just does. Even from the helmets to the boots. It works. The music for this is, in my opinion, pretty good. It's fitting, it creates a good atmosphere, it prepares you for both the battle and the Afghanistan-like scenes that I've talked about, and I like it. The music is good, the soundtrack is, in my opinion, it's perfect for the movie. It works without a doubt. Unfortunately, I have to go back to the animation because I have gripes with it. Every character looks old. They look old as you don't even imagine. They're geriatrics. Now you might see this as, well, being normal for Ultramarines and Space Marines in general. The problem is that Space Marines don't really age. They don't really show any more signs of aging after a while. But, of course, that comes with the exception of the Space Wolves, who do show signs of aging, from their hair growing and, well, it's turning white. Not really a fan of how the models look. In actuality, most of them look alike, and at some point, I think it's just me, but I had a problem telling apart certain characters from one another. It especially doesn't work that I think the captain and the apothecary share the same face. I swear, in my mind, they look the same. The story overall, in my opinion, is good. With a better animation, it could have worked even better. Again, I have to go back to the animation. Remember that part where I tell you to fight the demon? Well, the first time they fight the demon, when the captain gets heated off with it, the demon isn't really shown. You see glimpses of him, certain parts illuminated, but most of it is in the dark. You don't see anything that big of him being revealed. Which is interesting. Great suspense, it's great tension. At first I thought this was just their way of just not animating a demon prince so they can save budget. But no, later on, as I said, the demon prince is back and he looks interesting. The first time you see him, it's in like a middle transformation. He still has the face of the captain on. And he looks like a goblin. I'm not joking, he looks weird as all hell. I'm saying like a goblin because it's kind of hard to describe how he looks. It's like some sort of Gollum-like monster, but if Gollum was tall and bulkier, I guess. It's not that good. But later on, when he drops his face and wants to possess Proteus, he looks a little bit better. The demon looks better, and I say he looks better because it's also helped by the fact that you get closer ups of him. And I think those help way much better than the moment you see the demon prince at a distance. And that really helps, in my opinion. And that really helps sell the idea of the demon prince and how threatening it is of a creature, if all the Ultramarines he killed don't really count for anything. But still, I think that really helps, especially when the close-ups. Unfortunately, it's middle transformation, shall we say, when it's not yet fully revealed, isn't really helping that. I don't think close-ups could help it. Because at some point they make a close-up when he pushes Prometheus into a wall, and it kind of looks like it's just a regular Chaos Space Marine, like a Chaos Chosen. Again, not helped by the fact that the Demon Prince doesn't have wings. It has those weird sonic things that they can use. Again, it's not really helping its middle transformation. Its final one, when he finally drops the captain's face, is again pretty good, especially thanks to all the close-ups. Without the close-ups, it probably would have been just as bad as its captain face transform. It just wouldn't have worked, and it looks comical. But then again, have you seen the weapons? Those look even more comical. They look like they weigh, 100 kilos at this point. And still, they can wield them with ease, because the size is kind of wrong. Moving aside, anyway. Before watching this, I've heard rumors that the story was supposed to be about the Brothers of the Snake chapter. Not about the Ultramarines, but Games Workshop came in later on and kind of promoted the Ultramarines, which makes sense. They appear in most all boxes, nowadays especially. And of course it's the second company for reasons I cannot yet imagine or fathom, besides the link with the Space Marine game, which I think is a good enough reason to make it the second company, as much as I dislike it. What can I say else about the movie is that it's in a strange spot. I think it's in the same spot for me where the Warcraft movie is. It's that thing that it's flawed. It's in the Ultramarines movie's case, it's kind of very flawed with its animation. But still, if you know the universe, if you know the lore, you can appreciate it for what it is, and you can like it because of that. And I think that says a lot about movies like Warcraft or this one. It's the fact that it resonates with its target audience more than it could probably resonate with, shall we say, normies. Because its intended goal is for the fans. If you're watching this as a first timer to Warhammer 40k, you might not understand a bunch of things in it. You will get it, you will probably like it, but there are certain details and inputs here and there, like for example the company and the squad markings and everything, that really, you're gonna miss them. On a second viewing, once you get deeper into the lore and into the universe, you're gonna understand things. But as a first timer, there are certain lapses, shall we say, that are not really explained in the movie. Still, if you can ignore its flaws, I think it's very good. Another problem I have with the animation, because we always have to circle back to it. Remember, this is an animated movie. Is that at the end, Proteus inducts new Space Marines into his chapter, company, whatever. He is joined by one of his brothers that survived the whole battle with the Demon Prince. Tiny bit of a problem. The other battle brother still has his markings from the 5th squad. Which doesn't make sense because presumably we're after that point. He should probably have a more important role, not have a squad marking on him. But you could always just say, oh, he's supposed to be a sergeant and that's why he has it. And it makes sense because you don't really see his helmet in the last scene, so you're not really that sure if he became a sergeant later on. But what we do know is that Proteus becomes captain of the 2nd company. And with Titus and Sicarius into this position, the 2nd company feels a little bit doomed. But on the other side, I think this is what happens when you get to be the main focus of Games Workshop and the Space Marine thing. You will be in positions that are not that favorable to you. But there also comes the benefit of always coming up on top, despite the losses and everything. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about the characters. As I said before, it's really interesting how they delve into the characters, how they explore them. The Apothecary is old, he's grizzled, he's a veteran, he understands the horrors of battle. The Space Marines, the other ones, the tactical squad, don't really get it because this is mostly their first time getting into this position. And they kind of mock the poor Apothecary until the Apothecary, proves his worth and does everything he can to save Proteus. Unfortunately, the other members of Proteus' squad don't really get to see that because they kind of got butchered by the Demon Prince. Yet still, there are pretty interesting lines. We get the most important line in the whole movie, where the Apothecary of the Imperial Fist tells the Chaos Marines attacking them, "Burn, heretic." Again, I like that. Made me chuckle inside. I loved it. Can't say anything bad about that. Also, the Apothecary. Let's go back to the Apothecary. The Apothecary has some interesting lines. For example, at some point, a Space Marine, I think it's even the captain, that says the Emperor protects, and the Apothecary responds back by saying, "Having a loaded bolter never hurt either." Which, technically, it's true. But now you might be wondering, okay, I understand, it's meh, if you like Warhammer, you can get into it. But what's the deal with only a squad of Ultramarines? Why do they complain about lacking glory and stuff? Well, the collector's edition of the movie came in with a comic book that explained a few things. The comic book acts like a prequel to the events of the movie. From my understanding, it's pretty short. But unfortunately, I could not find a copy of it anywhere I looked online. So, it's a mystery to everyone. But see, I complain about the animation a lot, and I always interjected whatever I'm talking about something. Here's the good thing about the animation. The moment Proteus smashes the hammer into the demon's skull, the moment he smashes the demon with the hammer is amazing. It looks really good, and I think it's one of the highlights of the movie. Again, I can now complain about the bolters not only being comically large but having no impact to them, which you would expect a little bit of impact with all the force and power they have behind them, but it is not to be. Unfortunately, not so. On another note, the movie does very well when it tries to show you the horror that the Chaos Space Marine can put you through. The way the Imperial Fist bodies are desecrated, turned into objects for the Chaos Gods by the Chaos Space Marines is frightening. It is unsettling, especially because at some point you get some good close-ups and shots of the Imperial Fist and, well, their gruesome end. On the other side, remember I said that, the armor for the Ultramarines is pretty good? I can't say the same about the Chaos Space Marines. Besides one or two moments where things are really focused on them, their armor is not that good looking. It doesn't look as well animated, it doesn't look as good. I think there's one close-up or two of the Chaos Space Marines that really make everything work and they look good in it, compared to the Ultramarines that look pretty well. Especially, I'm gonna even say it, the chaplain for the Imperial Fist, he looks amazing. Even has the studded shoulder pad. The skull helmet that the chaplain wears is also interesting because it seems to have some model, some yellow design to it, which makes it pop out more once you get a close-up of it. Once you get it in the center of the screen, it really helps and it looks very good. You see, I can also say good things about the animation. Two interesting moments that I really like in, scenes, is one after the whole training part in the beginning with the Ultramarines, where one of the Space Marines is carving "Kill Heretics" or "Kill the Heretic," or was it "Kill all heretics" on one of his bolts. And you get to see that fly later on, and unfortunately it doesn't kill the heretic, which is disappointing. Another interesting moment that I really liked is that the place where the movie starts for the Ultramarines, in that whole chapel, Reclusiarchum, whatever thing, there is stained glass. And the image on the stained glass is a rendition of the Battle for MACCRAGE starter set. It looks pretty good, and it's one of the better parts of the whole animation. I really like that stained glass, and it's nice that we get to see it in the beginning and in the end. Kind of a nice way to circle things around. Overall, the movie has its good points, especially, as I said before, if you are a fan of Warhammer 40k, it really does and works very well. If you can go and, not take into consideration the whole things with the animation being iffy, even for 2010 standards. But it looks good. I would expect to see cinematics like those in the game, because I don't care about graphics in games, especially realistic stuff, but that's a story for another time. Until then, I hope you enjoyed it, and
We march for MACCRAGE, and we shall know no fear.